How's it going, guys? Brito here showing you my Texas Regional Championship deck list. It's 7th grade Demon Lords, and I went undefeated with it, 8-0 at Texas this past weekend on November, I think it was 3rd, 2nd. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So for the eggs, I only run 4 of the Gated Deadly Sins. I don't like running the 5th egg Yggdrasil because I think it's just bait, it's troll. It's it's a card that turns off about 25 to 30% of your deck, and it's literally the stuff that, like, I'll get into it as the cards come out, but it you can't Agudamon because you can't Digivolve on top of your Digimon because of the gate. If it ends up being the first egg, it turns off so much of your deck. Like, you can't Digivolve on your turn, so you can't Digivolve into Agudamon and try to go for that kind of a win con. You can't also use the 4 cost option Rise because you don't have a purple source unless and you if you play it, you can't tuck underneath because it would be treated as an Yggdrasil egg and not a gate, so it turns off those, and that's another card that like people run as a 3 or 4 of. So it turns off a lot of stuff. It's cool to have the bodies on board, but in this kind of format where it's very easy to out bodies to play control, it's just, to me, not worth it. So yeah, I only run the 4 gates, and then for the next card, I run 4 Beelzemons. I believe Beelzemon is the best Digimon in the whole game. He is a cool little edgy biker guy. He is great for the deck. One, because he helps fill up the trash with the other Demon Lords, the other the other cool guys, and yeah, I run him at 4. Honestly, I do see a world where in future sets people might drop him down to 3 to fit in other guys. But honestly, I don't ever see myself doing that just because he is my favorite Digimon. As a matter of fact, I love playing the Beelzemon deck, period. It's what I'm mostly known for. But yeah, this deck, I literally call it Beelze N Friends. It's a great deck. So yeah, I run 4 of these. His utility is not only to fill up trash, but to also de-digivolve. Let's say they have a level 6 on board and they had swung with it, you could just hard drop this, keep turn with it, because normally if it's a 2 cost, 2 cost when you have all the gates out, or free when you have the 5 different names. Oh, a tip for the eggs. The way the egg reads, it's you may reduce by 3 per gate, and then you may reduce by 4 instead if you reach 5 different names on the gate. Meaning that if you reach the 5 different names, you may choose between 3 or 4. So you can play around more with the memory. Like if I was at 0 and I want to pass turn with him, I could just play him for 1 because I would reduce by 10. So I do 3, 3, 4 on the eggs to play him for 1 if I just want to pass my opponent to 1. So like the utility of this egg is great. You would not be able to do that if you have the Yggdrasil egg as the first one, because you wouldn't be able to reduce by that because you will not stack under him to get more reduction for the egg effect. So yeah, that's another reason why I don't like the eggs. When it comes to the Beelzemon, he helps fill up the trash. He helps de-digivolve. He has rush, so he can either swing at security or swing at over a Digimon that's suspended. He's great. The other 4 of in this deck, the other guy is Creepy. Him I don't ever see dropping down from 4. He's another guy that helps fill up the trash. But one thing he does that Beelzebub doesn't is that he actually blows up a body, and then he trashes the top card of your deck for each level the body you pop. So he pops the lowest DP. With this guy, I don't see him ever running to 4 because he's one of your many guys that can actually remove a body instead of just filling up trash. He does both, so he's great. He's great, and he's once you have the third the the last gate, he either plays for 3 or for free. So yeah, boom. Then for the other one, which is arguably, if Beelzebub was in this deck, I would probably say he was the best Demon Lord here. But honestly, objectively speaking, I think he is the best. 4 of Lucemon Chaos Mode. I think he is the best card in the whole deck, mainly because his effect to recover. He's what keeps you in the game. If your opponent gets over aggressive with you, you could always use him to start blowing up bodies on the board to reduce the aggression, or your opponent can just end up trashing top security and you end up recovering one. He's great for that, and on top of that, when he's removed, you can bottom deck the level 3 from either his sources or trash to play out another Demon Lord. So he has so much utility. Like once he's on the board, your opponent has to be careful with how they play. And it came up so much in the regional where I had this, and it kind of slowed down my opponent. Because like for example, let's say a Mirage, if they went into Mirage and they bounced this back to my hand, they could uh I could hit him with the no U. It's like, all right, this gets bounced back to my hand. I bottom deck the level 3 from the trash, and then I play out like a creepy mon or a Levia to blow up his guy. So this guy makes things awkward for a lot of different matchups, especially when he's removed from the battle area. So he helps with recovering, and he helps with putting your opponent in awkward positions. He's, to me, I don't ever see him dropping him from 4 of. He's great. He's amazing. All right. And then I run 2 of the BT7 Lucemon. Some people have him at 1, some people have him at none. I think he's at minimum should be a 1 of in the deck, mainly because he is here for mainly Tamer hate. In this meta, in EX07, as well as the next set 2.0, we're going to have a lot of Tamers. So the more Tamer hate you could put in this deck, the better. So yeah, I want to see 2 of this guy because I want as consistent as possible to be able to just pop Tamers on the board. Alright. For the next one, it's the level 3 Luce. He's a mandatory 4 of, in my opinion, mainly because when you hard drop him, he drops for 5, which it is a lot, but with his utility, it makes it totally worth it. So his thing that a lot of people use him for, including myself, is the on-play search. On-play and starter main search to reveal top 3 and get an Angel, which is essentially himself, or a 7-grade Demon Lord, which is pretty much all the other pieces in the deck. So he's a really, really good searcher to keep the not only trash being filled because you trash the rest, but also like keeping your hand size neutral. It's on play and starter main. His other utility is his end of turn effect. Because like let's say you have like a creepy or a Beelzemon. One of my favorite plays to do, which did come up a lot in the regional, is play out let's say a 7-grade Demon Lord to keep turn. Specifically one with the all turns effect to tuck under the gates. So I play him, do whatever I can on the board. If I need to blow up anything, I'll just de-digivolve and swing over it if I could. But then I would follow up with this guy on play, reveal top 3, yada yada, and then end of turn, place him to the top security so you recover 1, trigger his all turns when he's removed, tuck something from the trash, and then he goes into this Lucemon Chaos mode, and you get the wind digivolving, make your opponent do the choice, and then you have now him on the board. So this is either just a recover 1 play and pop something, or straight up recover 2 play. So this combo helps out so much in a lot of different matchups, including Ancient Guru when you're trying to mitigate their aggression, and if other aggressive decks when they have that really early start, this kind of combo is really, really, really good. It helps you stay in the game. Note that you can't do it to go onto this Lucemon because this Lucemon doesn't have a Digivolution requirement. It only has an effect that he can Digivolve into a Lucemon from your hand for a cost of, I think it's like 7. This rarely comes up. I never use this. So if you have him in trash, you can never Digivolve into him. You can only Digivolve into this Lucemon. So yeah. Boom. Just organize this a little bit. So yeah, 4 of these Lucemons. Search, fill up trash, and recover. Great card. I like to either play them early game or hold them in my hand if I know the matchup, and if it's going to be an aggressive matchup, I like holding them in my hand for those recovery plays. Then the next cool guy I want to go with is Levia. I run 3 of this Levia because actually let me show you all the Levias. So I do a 3-2 split of these guys. A lot of people, they consider the EX6 Levia, the new one, as the bad Levia, and I cannot disagree with everyone more. I don't consider one better than the other. I think some are better than others in certain situations. For example, the reason I run this Levia 3 and this Levia 2, even though I don't consider one better than the other, is because I'm more afraid of being behind than I am ahead. So let's say my opponent has a very scary board where they have multiple bodies. In those situations, I'd rather see him than him, since his on play is if your opponent has equal or more Digimon and Tamers than you, he pops the highest and then he pops the lowest regardless. So he's good for when your opponent is ahead or you're behind, while this guy, he strips all turns when an opponent plays Digimon or you play a 7-grade Demon Lord. you could pitch a card from your hand to bottom deck the bottom three sources of one of your Digimon, or one of your opponent's Digimon, which does come up a lot. Then, if your opponent has equal or less, so he requires less, you delete a Digimon with no sources on your opponent's field. So the main difference between these two, I like to think of it as this one is good for when you're behind and you're trying to like catch up to your opponent and try to like blow up a lot of a lot of their bodies, and then this one is really good when you're ahead. So this came up in my Magnamon X matchup where I got it 2-0. I'll explain my matchups later on in the video, but this is the body, this is the guy that single-handedly like won me the match. I kept on setting up like a blocker on the field with the 4-cost option, and he just kept on going for it and swinging. So when I would block, I'd die, I'd pop the rise, and I'd play out this guy. This is the only Demon Lord in the body in the game in the deck that can actually out a Magnamon X stack, because he bottom decks the bottom three sources, which he strips his armor, and then since he's unaffected because you decided to block, he then pops something with no sources, which is the Magnamon X. You could also try to do this to try to go for like a double pop kind of play, but since it's usually Magna X then Magnamon, he usually has double armor purge. So when you pop him twice, he just goes back to a Vmon. Same thing if you play out a Beelzemon to Digivolve 2, he just goes back to a Vmon. Creepy would only pop once. Like all the other guys would only uh, it would deal with the Magnamon X, but it wouldn't deal with the stack itself, except for Levia, this Levia. So try not to sleep on this card, guys. This guy has his utility. Um, I can understand running him as a one of, but I kind of prefer him as a two of. There might be a future set where I might cut him down depending on the meta, because the beauty of 7 Great Demon Lords is that each demon, each of the cards of the big guys, they're good in certain situations and certain matchups. So depending on what the meta is when you rearrange your ratios to accordingly. So yeah, let's continue on. And then I run 2 of the Levi X's. Again, it's mostly for the Tamer hate, and I was really worried about an overly aggressive Imperial Dramon deck, and Levi X tends to help out with that because he works similar to Biting Crush in the sense where when an opponent plays a Digimon or a Tamer, by an effect, he Digivolves into a Levi from the trash. So this helps out a lot in Ancient Garuru matchup, in Imperial, as well as Ancient Garuru, because when their stack dies and you have like a Levia out, let's say, because they bounce something else on your field, they oftentimes play out a Tamer without paying its cost, and they played it by an effect, triggering him to Digivolve into a Levia from the trash, into a Levia. So yeah, so 2 of is good. I guess in this tournament today, not today in Texas, it only came up like once or twice, but I'd still like there was nothing I would have changed in this deck list for this tournament, because like it still came up because I still saw it consistent enough. So yeah. And then the next guys are 2 and 2 of the Belphamons. I see sometimes people running them as a one-ofs because they don't really do much for the deck, but honestly, this guy can be kind of sneaky because people only see that he suspends level 5s or lowers for each card you pitch from your hand, which you can only pitch up to 3, and then you delete all suspended Digimon at the lowest play cost. The thing is, a lot of people don't see this coming, but I sometimes just play. Let's say they kept all their level 5s or lowers unsuspended, and they only really attacked with their level 6 or level 7 or something. Well, I could always just play this. On play, I don't pitch anything from my hand, and then I pop all suspended Digimon. Since their level 6 or their level 7 is the only thing suspended, that's the only thing he targets to delete. So I caught a lot of people off guard with that kind of play. So don't sleep on this guy. Running as a 1 to 2 of is still great. Sleep mode, he's really good defensively, but something I really like doing is to play around, let's say, Crimson Blaze or Gatsu. I hard drop him on play, tuck this guy under from the trash. He can no longer be affected by your opponent's effects, and then you just Digivolve into a Gudo, and that's it. Like you play around, let's say if your opponent plays a Biting Crush against you, you play around that because you could just, if you meet the requirements of gates, you just pop the gates, not play out an Agudo because it says when you have 7 or more, you may pop it and you may pop it and you may play an Agudo. So you can just pop this, not play out the Agudo, and then just win the game with the Agudo you already have on the field. So yeah. The reason I run as a 2 and 2 is because I want to see that combo as consistent as I can. I want to have at least one sleep mode in my hand at all times and set up one of these in trash at all times. So yeah, I want that actually came up a few times in the tournament, and yeah, I'm happy with that. And then the next card is a one of Lilith. I really like this card. It's unfortunate that in the current meta, she's not needed for too many matchups, though she did come up quite a few times in this tournament to out Floodgates. Because spoilers, I don't run Porcupine in this deck at all. I'm a firm believer that he's not needed to out Floodgates. And those a few times where my opponents got like, let's say, a Floodgate early, like an Automamon or Sekmon, super early in the game where I couldn't really set up a excuse me, I couldn't really set up a defense. I would just hard drop the Lilith. On play, it dies at the end of your turn, and since it was early enough, they probably won't even OTK me, because it was oftentimes Mirage that they did that, or even Levi X, where they still had to set up a lot of stuff. So I would hard drop this, and then they wouldn't out. If they out this, then okay. Let's say it gets deleted. All turns when it will leave the battle area, I just pop the Floodgate, or I pop something else, to keep it on board. So she's really good at keeping Floodgates off the board. So yeah, that's some really good card in my opinion. Back in the Nume era, where we were plagued by that little golden turd, I ran it as a 3 of, because it absolutely overperformed in that matchup. Especially if they played Chikuris, it's like, all right, I'll just do this and then just blow up all your guys, and then boom, yeah. So she is very good for keeping Floodgates off the board. Otherwise, she's just a different name. And then in this tournament, I ran 3 Agudos. The reason I ran 3, even though 2 I think is perfectly fine, is because when I was first learning this deck and I was first testing it, I found myself in positions more comfortable, like more often than I felt comfortable with, that I was completely dominating. My opponent's board was cleared. They couldn't promote their guy because there was no value for them to do that. But I couldn't finish the game because one Agudo was in security and the other Agudo was at the bottom of my deck. So I upped it to 3 to mitigate that risk, because I hated going into time or being the reason why we drew. So 3 to increase the likelihood of seeing this card early, or risk not having them locked in security or the bottom of the deck. So yeah, 3, but 2 is honestly perfectly just fine. It's just a personal preference that I just want to mitigate the chances of going into time because of not seeing him. And then I ran 2 ruins. 1 is just fine. 0 I think is unacceptable. I think you have to run at least a 1 of this card. So this card is mainly to help out with the Imperial matchup, because like, oh, you just blow up their guy and then you just keep turn with it and you digivolve into ruin mode to just blow up their body and slow them down. It also helps with a lot of other like aggressive matchups like Ancient Garuru, because once you do this, it kind of stops them from even doing the warping play, since they would digivolve into the Kendo, which is 6k. They do a lot. They do stay alive at 1k, but as soon as they go for the swing and they warp into the Lobo, it immediately dies before they're able to activate the one digivolving, because the Lobo is a 5k. So for Ancient Guru, this is also really good. For Imperial, this is really good. And just overall, just this is a really good card. And it's broken, and Bandai should have probably never printed out this card. Yeah, and then for the options, I'm running 4 of the Rises. This is really good to like set up kind of like a response to anything your opponent might set up on your turn. Like let's say you just pass turn with like a Beelzemon or a Creepy, and then on the turn after they decide to play like a Floodgate, and it's like, all right, now you can't do anything about it. Well, if you have this, you absolutely can do something about it. So like your 7 Great Demon Lord gets deleted. You tuck something under the source if it has that effect, and then you pop this, and 7 Great Demon Lord was deleted, and you play out another guy from your sources, and you just out the Floodgate. So this is part of the reason why I don't believe a Porcupine is really necessary, because I was able to set up these early enough to out any floodgates my opponent might try to use to slow me down. Out of all my matchups, I would say about 3, or if I remember off the top of my head, 4 of them were playing floodgates against me, and there was only one time where they played it early enough where I didn't have time to set this up, and I couldn't draw into any outs for the floodgate. So with that being said, this is one of the reasons why I really like it. It's not mainly for the floodgates, but it's just to be able to answer many of my opponent's threats that he left on board the turn prior. I like to exhaust all my rises before I do a Gudo out, because one thing I hate doing is having to do this and then not using it when after I pop out Ogudo, and if I don't win that turn, I just do it to like clear board and try to set up for game the following turn. It just feels like a wasted resource that if I have this on the board and it was just never used. Not even like if it just got hit from security and I never used it, I feel like it's just kind of a waste. But regardless, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to win the game. But yeah, um, newer players that are playing the deck, abuse this as much as you can. 3 to 4 of is okay. Anything less is just a mistake. And then it's this is probably the hardest cut I had to make, but dropping it down to 2. I think this is easily a 4 to 3 of. 2 of is just fine. It's sometimes I felt kind of bad having to use this from my hand to give my opponent a bunch of memory just to out one guy. This is something else I'm kind of okay with using to out a floodgate. Depends on which matchup it is, because it's like sometimes you could just do this to give your opponent way too much memory, and then they just OTK you there anyways. But regardless, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and a 2 of is totally fine. It synergizes like really well with this deck, because when you pitch a 7 grade Demon Lord, it delays, it stays on the battlefield up until they play a Digimon by an effect, or you pop this to play out a Leviathan from the trash. But yeah, 2 of was perfectly fine for me in this tournament. I think 3 to 4 of, especially in 2.0 format, would be a lot better. But yeah, 2 of for today. And then 1/7 Lightning, it synergizes well with the Leviathan package we have in here, because we have a bunch of those. So yeah, 1 of is totally fine. Then it's a 1 of Calling. Yeah, it's a 1 of, it's helped me recur resources. So yeah, this is kind of a purple staple. Everyone runs this in their purple decks. If you don't, you're kind of making a mistake. And then for Tamers, I'm running 3 of the Digimon Emperors and then 3 Shotos. Before, I used to really like doing a 4 Digimon Emperors and then 2 Shotos, but in a lot of matchups, the Shotos became slightly more important, so I switched the ratio around. And I was a little bit iffy about that, because when it comes to Ancient Guru, especially the red base, the Digimon Emperors is the card in the deck that tends to overperform. Because the way I see that matchup is you're getting attacked by 2 fronts. You're getting attacked by the breeding area when they promote their rookies and they kind of rookie rush you, especially with their Ukos, and then you're getting attacked with them digivolving on top of their Tamers, the hybrids. So the Digimon Emperors kind of like splits up their aggression, where you use this to make them think twice about promoting the rookie, because if they promote the rookie and they lose the memory, they might not have the memory to attack with their Tamers to hybrid. So this heavily slows down their aggression, and this helped out a bunch, especially in the one Ancient Guru matchup I had. But fortunately today, not today, in the Texas Regional, it was mostly here for the draw power it enables the deck. And then the Shotos is something that helped out a ton in the entire day, and I'm really happy I upped it to 3. Mainly because not only the blocker kind of slowed down my opponent's aggression, but also the memory gain. There was plenty of times where I got this out early, like turn 1, and my opponent got a floodgate out turn 1 early, putting me to 1. And then start of main, I'll gain a memory going to 2, and I had nothing else to do but to just hard drop creepy, put him to 10, pop their guy. Now I have a blocker with the creepy, and I added their floodgate, and fortunately I was not OTK'd after that. Because I just they didn't. It was too early in the game for them to have the setup to do that, anyways. So yeah, after that I would just set up a rise or go into ruin and try to loop ruin to try to keep floodgates off the board. So yeah, I'm really happy with this ratio. Shoto overperformed in this regional because of all the being able to enable me to deal with the floodgates with the memory gain. And then yeah, the Digimon Emperor, it helped out a ton with draw power and keeping my hand size steady. And the last card in the deck, Kurata. The Akihiro Kurata, it's really good for cycling, but it's also really good for getting playing around Paladin mode. Paladin mode is one card everyone believes is the killer of this deck, but honestly, it's the easiest card to play around, because straight up all you got to do is keep a an Agudo in hand, and if they see like those plenty of times where my opponent saw like, oh, I have two Agudos in trash and I'm at 7 different names. All right, they would play the Paladin mode, put me to a bunch, and then I'm like, all right, cool. End of turn, draw one, trash one off Akihiro, trash the Agudo, and then I pop gates anyways, and I go for game regardless. So that's actually how I won my final match against the deck I'll bring up later, where it was Mother Ace control. They did Paladin mode, they bottom decked my two Paladin modes and everything else, and I already had like 8 or 9 under the sources. And they started going for the attacks the following turn, and they hit into this guy, and then I hit him with the end of turn. I drew into my third Agudo, trashed it, popped the gates, and I went for the Agudo for game. So this guy is very, very sneaky and very, very helpful. It makes the Paladin mode Ace counterplay very, very, very easy. Like I was not worried about Paladin mode at all, just because of this card and how to play around it. All right. So now to kind of get into my matches, I'll briefly explain to them. I won't get too into detail about it because I don't think you guys want to hear that. But yeah, it's let me pull it up right here on my notes. My round one was Imperial 2-0. My round was Imperial. Round two was Ancient Guru Red Base 2-0. Round three was Mirage 2-0. That tends to be an easy matchup, but if they get their floodgates early, it gets a lot worse. But fortunately, I was able to like with how I spoke about how to counterplay it. I was able to just get it 2-0. Round four was Magna X. It was like the blue base one, so like the regular blue Magna. I got it 2-0 because of the combo I explained to you, like have a blocker on board with the Rise or even like a Lucemon chaos mode. They would swing, I would block, and I would play out the EX6 Levia, the bad Levia to out the stack. Round five was against Imperial. It was another 2-0. So up until this point, I've clean sweeped all my opponents. But it was each game was kind of a sweaty match. Like there was only maybe 1 or 2 games up until this point that my opponents made it bricked. But up until like that point, like it was fighting tooth and nail, and each round ended up with like 10 minutes left on the round. So yeah, round six was against Mirage. It was actually I played against actually Eagle X. The guy was really really cool. It's the first time I ever met him, and he bricked game one. Game two, he got an Otamamon super early, and I just was not drawing to any of the outs that I had for it. And he just 2 turns later, he was just able to OTK me with his Mirage. And then it was game three that we had like a very big back and forth where it was actually a very sweaty matchup. And unfortunately, I was able to get the third game. Round seven, Leviathan X. I got it 2-0. I played around his floodgates exactly how I mentioned before. Game one, I got lucky that he didn't get a Biting Crush out on time for me to Gudo for game. And then games two, I was just defending very well. I was looping Ruin mode to stop any floodgates from coming out. And then again, I didn't give him the time to set up a Biting Crush. He just couldn't draw into it. And yeah, I got that game. And then my last round, by round seven, I was the last undefeated in the tournament. And by round eight, I played against this I want to say Mother Ace control, where it was pretty much Mother Shoto, and then he ran a bunch of like Tamers to like support the Mother, and then he had everything else in the deck was just pretty much aces. That was arguably one of the easier matchups, but this guy went into round eight with only having one draw, winning every single one of his rounds. So I'm like, in my head, I'm like, nah, it's not over till it's over. I don't care how easy this matchup is, bro. Just like one wrong skill check or knowledge check, and this guy could just get the whole game off me. So no. And I was fortunate enough where I was able to get games one and two. That one ended with like I want to say 15 minutes left on the clock because it was back and forth. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew every single one of his outs, and he was definitely someone that deserved to be in table one in the final round. So like much respect to him. And yeah, that was my rounds. That was my deck profile. This was the last regional for EX07, and I still stick on playing this deck for 2.0, and I do plan on excuse me. I do plan on switching it up, and some of the cards I want to add in from the 2.0 set is Lucemon X antibody. As to what's the ratios, I'm not sure, but just stay tuned for your future deck profile. If you guys have any comments, leave them down in the comment section below. If you have any questions, go ahead and don't forget to comment and subscribe. Take it easy, guys.